and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Sensei with us. Thank you for being here, sir.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Attendees at the moment, we have Amy and Brian and Chris and Craig. Good to have everyone. Today, now, if you notice, we have not been posting as many podcasts as we usually do. Reason for that, if you're new to the program, I'd suggest going back and listen to all of our back episodes. I think we're up to 180, 90 episodes, something in there, or maybe even more than that. Go back and listen to those. We took a step back from recording. We're still doing meetings on other days other than the first Thursday of the month. We had some people that wanted to have a more like a real AA meeting, more like a real recovery meeting where we talk about the Tao Te Ching and how it relates. And so every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, and all the other Thursdays at 4 p.m., other than the first Thursday, we're going to have an unrecorded meeting for the moment. We did that for the month of November, and it went well. We'll see if it does well for December and go from there. I know more so the Tuesday night meeting has gotten new people that are coming that could not come otherwise because now we have a meeting in the evening, which has been good. So good meetings on Tuesday night. We'll just see what happens after the first of the year, but you guys are welcome. The link is taomeeting.com, and that will take you to the Zoom link. You have to be logged into your Zoom account, your free Zoom account for authentication, so we don't have a password. But you're welcome there anytime. 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday and 4 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. Okay, the 26th verse of the Tao Te Ching. I'll go ahead and read Stephen Mitchell, and then if you guys want to read another translation, you're welcome to. The heavy is the root of the light. The unmoved is the source of all movement. Thus the master travels all day without leaving home. However splendid the views, she stays serenely in herself. Why should the lord of the country flit about like a fool? If you let yourself be blown to and fro, you lose touch with your root. If you let restlessness move you, you lose touch with who you are. We had entitled this before, Living Undisturbed was our title that we had used. Some of the other translations say some things a little different. I really like the Star translation too. Anyone want to read one of the others that speaks to them off out of our normal source or any other source that you guys? How about the Clear English, Brian? The new translation you have, how does that one interpret this?
It says, let's see, we're at 26. It says, heavy is the source of light. Stillness is the master of impatience. So the sage travels all day and never leaves his supply wagon. Despite glorious sights, the sage lives apart. This is how he transcends them. How can the master of 10,000 chariots act lightly in public? Act lightly, lose the source. Act with haste, lose the throne.
Okay, thank you. Who did that one, Brian? Who's?
Jeff Pepper.
It's the Tao Te Ching in plain English.
Yeah.
Sensei, you want to read the Star? Or which one did you want to read?
Yeah, let me read the Wayne Dyer first.
Okay.
Because it's very similar to the one that you read. The heavy is the root of the light. The still is the master of unrest. Realizing this, the successful person is poised and centered in the midst of all activities. Although surrounded by opulence, he is not swayed. Why should the lord of the country flit about like a fool? If you let yourself be blown to and fro, you lose touch with your root. To be restless is to lose one's self-mastery. So it reminds me a little bit of both rest and unrest come from illusion, but with enlightenment there is no liking or disliking, is a line from a Chan poem that is similar. And then the star, this particular verse, is very accessible and mercifully brief. The inner, and this is slightly different, in a way that I think is important. The inner is foundation of the outer. So instead of the heavy is the root of the light. So it's comparing and contrasting another binary. The inner is foundation of the outer. The still is master of the restless. The sage travels all day, yet never leaves his inner treasure. Though the views are captivating and beg attention, he remains calm and uninvolved. Tell me, does the lord of a great empire go out begging for rice? One who seeks his treasure in the outer world is cut off from his own roots. Without roots, he becomes restless. Being restless, his mind is weak. And with a mind such as this, he loses all command below heaven. So I'm prepared to comment on that at some point, but we may have some others who want to read.
Anyone want to read or?
Of course, I want to read Ron Hogan's. To be light on your feet, you need a steady mind. If your body is active, your mind should be relaxed. A master can travel long distances and still see everything she owns. She may be surrounded by beauty, but she isn't caught up in it. Why run around thoughtlessly? If you act lightly, you lose your bearings. If you act recklessly, you lose your self-control.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, he kind of puts everything in modern idiom, doesn't he?
Sensei, you want to comment, sir?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot here to unpack, but as I said, I think it's one of the briefer ones and more accessible, kind of Zen related. So the inner is foundation of the outer, the still is master of the restless. From a Zen perspective, Hakuin Zenji, 18th century, said there is no inner and outer. So even something like the polarity or the dyad of inner and outer is challenged in Zen. In fact, the realization of non-separation of self and other, etc., mind and object, this is one of the central focuses of Zen. So when this one says the inner is the foundation of the outer, that would be a little dualistic for Zen. We would probably counter by saying the outer is the foundation of the inner. So the two would be mutually defining, just as subject and object are mutually defining. And Dogen has a phrase where he says, in stillness, the emphasis on stillness here is very Zen. People think of Zen as quietism, but it's not at all quiet. But it is reaching a deeper stillness in your meditation, recognizing and moving toward deeper and deeper stillness. So Dogen said, in stillness, mind and object merge in realization and go beyond enlightenment. So stillness is key in Zen. And the stillness here is the matter of the restless. Both rest and unrest come from delusion, but with enlightenment, there is no liking or disliking. The inner and outer are conventions. We think of ourselves looking out of our head, and the outer objects, the outer world are out here. But many poems and teachings in Zen kind of challenge this by saying, although, this is from Precious Mirror Samadhi, although it is not constructed, it being capital IT, meaning what you're after here, the realization or insight that you're after, although it is not constructed, in other words, language, everything that concepts, everything that we have other than this basic reality are constructions that are reflecting reality, are trying to capture reality. But the reality itself cannot be constructed. is not a construction. So this is Tozan, who founded Soto Zen in China. He said, although around 800 in China, he said, although it is not constructed, it is not beyond words. Like facing a precious mirror, form and reflection behold each other. You are not it, but in truth, it is you. So it's turning the 180 degrees around. Not only am I, in one sense, yes, I am in here looking out, but in another sense, this is all looking back at me. This is all mine. This is also mine. So the non-separation of subject and object is something which we think is subject to experience, but it's not subject to explaining. It cannot be caught in words. So I think that we challenge right away, the inner is the foundation of the outer is a little too one-sided. The inner and the outer define each other. And it's a relative or conventional definition. On an absolute level, there, as Hakuin says, there is no inner and outer, actually.
Now, Sensei, in the star, the still is the master of the restless.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's the second.
That reminds me of Zazen. That reminds me of meditation.
Yes. Stillness.
Yes.
Stillness is, we fix the gaze, we sit very still, the breathing slows down, everything becomes more and more still. And it's thought to be a natural process in which there's a turning point at which when you become still enough, if you sit still enough for long enough, as I like to say, this will become clear to you. The revelations of Zen and Taoism are all accessible to us through our own direct experience. This is the thesis in Zen. Much more so than trying to capture them in words or trying to understand in words.
The Tao puts it, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao.
Right.
And then
the sage, go ahead.
Katagiri, the book we're reading, he talks about it, that it's the pivot of nothingness. That pivot, that we're going to this formlessness, emptiness, that's where that's what the finger's pointing at, I think, is that oneness that you were talking about.
Pivot is used in a lot of different ways. This 180-degree turnaround in your consciousness where instead of chasing after it, you sit back and let it come to you as an attitudinal thing. Then the human birth is known as the pivot. In Japanese, the word is yoki, Y-O-K-I. The essential part of any machine, or like a bicycle, it's the sprocket and the chain, otherwise the bicycle won't go. That's called the yoki. So the human birth is the essential pivot point for awakening, according to Buddhism. Chickens, dogs, cats, and cows, not very probable. You have to be born as a human being. So do not waste your time meaninglessly. This is an opportunity to wake up. So being born as a human being is the pivot, the yoki for awakening and so on. This next verse, the sage travels all day, yet never leaves his inner treasure. So when we sit on the cushion in meditation, we think that's meditation. And then when we get up and walk away, we think that's not meditation. But when my son was very young, he was like 3 or 4 years old, we had to leave early in the morning to go somewhere, and he got in the back of the car, and we drove away, and he's looking out the window, and it was full moon. And he said, oh, the moon comes with us. When you travel in the car, it's like the moon is coming with you. So it's the same thing in meditation. Whatever happens on the cushion goes with you when you leave the cushion. Amy, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I definitely wanted to comment on that.
Okay.
Never leaves his inner treasure. And I want to relate it to recovery, because I didn't realize before I got sober that I was running from me. I was trying to run away. I was making geographic, what we know as geographics. And I was, okay, if I can just find the right city, I'll be sober and I'll stop doing the dumb things that I'm doing and drinking all of that stuff. And so it wasn't until I got into sobriety and started working a program of recovery that I realized wherever I go, there I am. And I always take me with me. Now, before I was trying to run from myself. Now I'm really I really like me now. And so I'm really, and I don't want that to sound egotistical, but like, because I practice principles, I'm kind, try to be to the best of my ability. Obviously, I'm a human being as well.
Yep.
But so it's really interesting that, and I travel quite a bit. I'm traveling even more now than I ever have. And it's really comforting to know that wherever I go, there I am, because I am really who I am and trying to be the best, true, authentic version of myself. And that's a really nice, kind person.
It is.
Not trying to run from me. So that just was really what struck me with that little section there.
Is that one of Andrew Dietz's little black and white priest statues back there on your shelf?
Probably not. If you're talking about that in the
statue on top of Buddy, I thought Buddy might have gotten one of those for you.
Oh no, on top of those tanks are just lights, but yeah, no, I don't have that. That's okay. That's okay.
You have
the
one
same guy who wrote this does those little carvings of black and white priests and nuns.
Yeah. So you see
but Sensei, there's your
yeah, that's the moon present.
Yes.
Yeah, the moon. Speaking of the moon.
Enlightenment is like the moon reflected in the water.
Yes.
The moon does not get wet and the water is not broken. I think that's hilarious.
Exactly.
It shows you. Yeah. So what you say there, I think, is critical, and it goes back to what we were talking about, separation of subject and object. Mind and object disappear in stillness. So we come to a kind of wholeness, or a kind of, the bifurcation of self and other is something we learn as we grow up in the crib, and we come out of the crib. Then we start to separate ourselves out from everything else. It's called individuation in psychology. So then it's the source of, it's considered a category error in Buddhism. You're learning one side of the truth. You're differentiating yourself from everything else, and you're creating a division between yourself and other. And that leads to alienation. That leads to anxiety. It leads to a lot of things. So the process that we go through, which is, again, a natural process in sitting in meditation, is all that comes back together. So it's kind of like a regression back to childhood where you become more whole. And, but the point we make is that relationship, that fundamental relationship of self to other, not self to others, plural, which would be like kumbaya, can't we all get along? It's more like Bodhidharma sitting in the cave by himself had this separation of self and other. That fundamental bifurcation is what we overcome in Zen. And once you do, and you're okay, you're comfortable in your own skin, you're happy without other people, without another relationship if necessary, you're happy to live alone in a cave as a nun or a monk, then you now have something to offer a relationship other than simple need, that you need this other person, which always corrupts a relationship. So from a psychological perspective, what you've gone through in recovery is really the same process and target of Zen practice, is to get over yourself, basically, and get to where you can be okay and have something to offer others. So now you're likable to everybody. Everybody likes Amy now.
Since I had here lately talking about the oneness, I've realized if I look at the moment as a picture rather than different in a different way, it helps me because, the picture is the picture. It's not me and them or this and that. It's just a picture. Yeah. So looking at every moment as the picture of the moment is helping me to let some of those differences go.
Yep. And by picture, you mean more like a 5-dimensional picture.
Yes.
It's in the round, so to speak.
Like a film strip. You've got one image after another, after another, after another, after another. And I'm looking, each of the moments is one of those images. And so it's not me and them, it's the image. It's everything, all of the universe and creation and everything in that moment.
Yep. And that's really kind of a personal relativity where space-time comes together for you, and you see that the persistence of vision from image to image that creates the animation and creates the continuity, the appearance of continuity. It's like a suspension of disbelief in a movie theater, where you suspend disbelief, and so you sort of assimilate into the story, and you can enjoy the plot. You can enjoy the story vicariously. You can look around and see that people are munching popcorn next to you, and it sort of brings you out of that reality back into this. So Buddhism is also like that, I think, and what Taoism was pointing at. Yes, it's like a movie, but on the other hand, it's really not like a movie. It's sort of moving in the same way and has a continuity, and I'm the star of my movie, and you're the star of yours, right? But the wake-up call is actually, it's temporary. It's not like a movie. It'll be over. Then we go get popcorn.
Sensei, the next line there, it talks about, it says it different ways, but the star says, does the Lord of a great empire go out begging for rice, is the way the star says it. They all say the same thing. Why should the Lord of the country flit about like a fool? That whole
right. So if you assume that he's talking about you, and you are the Lord of your own country, just as you are the star of your own movie, and you are happy with what you have, why would you be pursuing something else? Why would you be chasing after rice or popcorn or whatever? You would be content within yourself, within reason, as long as you're not starving to death and so forth. So the Lord of the country here, it says here, how does the Lord of a great empire go out? Does the Lord go out begging for rice? No, because they have access to all the rice they need. We already have everything we need, actually. So the sage travels all day, and it never leaves his inner treasure. So whatever it is that we discover through this process has always been with us. We've never been without it, but we have lost track of that. And so we think something is missing. And we go through life with a feeling of something missing. We don't know what it is, but we feel for sure it's missing. Then we come to Taoism, we come to Zen to find it. But the metaphor in Buddhism is called the Mani jewel, M-A-N-I, Mani jewel. It's a wish-fulfilling jewel that has the power to grant you any wish you want. And so that's conceived of as what you're after. You're looking for this thing that is going to fill that void. You're going to be happy now. And so it's called the Mani jewel, the wish-fulfilling jewel. So the metaphor is that the monk or the nun or the child gets estranged from his parents and leaves the castle and goes on a quest. And after many years comes back, and his father recognizes him as a beggar and brings him into the household and eventually takes over everything. So the Mani jewel is conceived of as already sewn into the hem of your robe. And you're looking for love in all the wrong places. You're looking for it everywhere else. As my grandmother would always say, one thing is sure, you'll find it in the last place you look. So the last place we look is always at home, right? It's already sewn into our robe.
Yeah. Sensei, Amy's got a question.
Yeah, not really a question, just another comment. I missed you guys. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. So anyway, I just noticed McDonald's translation on that, the Lord of a great empire. Okay, go out begging for it. Anyway, it says, why should the Lord of 1,000 chariots be amused at the foolishness of the world? If you abandon yourself to foolishness, you lose touch with your beginnings. If you let yourself become distracted, you will lose the basis of your power. That goes back to what, Sensei, you were saying about childlike faith. So much of, and bringing it back to recovery, of course, children, children just trust that they're going to be fed and clothed. They just know that their needs are they just have faith. They have, and then I'm going to go back to the big book. Here we go. Page 55. Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. So as a child, as I grew up and all of these worldly things got piled on me, drinking, drugging, all of those things, in addition to the other things, then it kind of put the light out, it kind of smothered the light that was inside. And so now uncover, discover, discard, get rid of all the things that aren't serving my inner light well. Get back to that childlike faith. That's good stuff.
Yeah, the reason we turn to drugs and drink, well, there are many reasons, but some of the reasons are that we have forgotten. And, mindfulness is a lot remembering. And when we sit in meditation or practice Taoism, and there's many, many routes to this, we think meditation is the most direct and quickest, the most effective. But when it starts to dawn on us that what we're looking for we already have, we no longer are running away from something that we think we don't have, or we're no longer looking for something we think we don't have. And a child who is abused and has a dissociative experience where they create another identity to take the abuse, and they sort of protect another identity. So, multiple identities is considered a disorder, I think, is an example of this, where in the real world, nothing is actually wrong. But when other human beings mistreat and abuse us, then that creates trauma in our world. And if you look at Putin bombing Ukraine, you can't deny that there's a big problem there. I mean, but all of the trouble in the world you can see is being created by human beings, and it's being created out of their ignorance. Putin also is suffering. He's looking for something that he thinks is missing from his life. I mean, you can't forgive him. I mean, it doesn't mean it's okay. But if you look at the world and you look at the suffering in the world, it's all caused by ignorance, mostly by human beings.
Sensei, it's interesting to me that, one of the first things I heard when I started looking at Zen and studying with the Monday Night Book Club, I heard the statement that all these paths start looking more and more similar as you get up the mountain.
Yeah.
They all start looking the same the further up you get.
Well, the mountain is getting narrower, so They all have to come together.
And I have a Course in Miracles study group, and they say the same. They use verbiage that's difficult for me and sounds divisive, but yet, in reality, what they're saying is we're all already one and together. They say in heaven, but it doesn't matter, Yeah. They're saying the same thing that you're saying today, that we're all saying.
Yep. The difference in Zen, I think, is the method, and the only thing we really consider that we are transmitting is the method. It's like music. You can teach somebody to play piano, the method, but you can't teach them music. And so Zen has settled on this one thing, this sitting meditation, as Soto Zen is. This is the most direct, effective way. This is what Buddha did. This is what, So they have this concept of Johnny One Note. You may have heard this joke. And the guy just plays one note all the time on his guitar or whatever. And people ask him about it, and he says, everybody else is looking for this note. I found it.
It reminds me, too, I wish Dennis was here to tell his little story. Where what they had, the wisdom, I think it was, that talking about enlightenment, you could say, and they decided the gods said they were going to, hide this somewhere. And they said, well, where can we hide it from everyone? And they said, well, we can put it at the bottom of the ocean. They said, no, they would figure out a way to get down and get it. Or we could put it on a high mountain. And they said, well, they'd find that. And they said, hey, Why don't we put it inside them and they'll never look there?
Yeah. Hidden in plain sight.
Yes. Yeah. That's good. What else with this, guys? Sensei, do you have any other comments?
Yeah,
with this?
a couple of things where we would differ from. This is instruction for you to take action and for you to develop attitude adjustment, right? That's what a lot of the Taoist instruction is. And Buddhist teachings fall into camps like that. One you could say is a prescription for practice, like the Eightfold Path and like Zen meditation. And others you could say are descriptions of reality. And sometimes they're woven together where it's hard to separate the prescription for practice from the description of reality from an enlightened viewpoint. So, and a lot of this has to do with translation into different languages. So we don't criticize anybody for this, but we have a lot of Zen teachers who, they talk about when you're sitting in meditation, notice this and notice that and notice this and notice that. And I've told a couple of our students, I say, you probably want to drop that term because it's a little demeaning. Everybody sitting in meditation is already noticing all kinds of crap. You don't have to tell them what to notice. You don't have to lead them by the nose. But so it's easy for us to fall into that kind of pedagogy, that kind of instructional pedagogy. So where he says one who, and this is interesting because he's telling parables and he's having you look at stories and do you see yourself in this picture or in this fable? And if you do, then, word to the wise. So one who seeks his treasure in the outer world is cut off from his own roots. Without roots, he becomes restless. Being restless, the mind is weak. The mind such as this loses all command below heaven. So we would say in Zen that you actually are never cut off from your own roots. It's impossible. The only possibility is that you can misinterpret that, and you can think that you're cut off from your own roots. So you can put a barrier between yourself and your own awareness of insight unintentionally. And that's one form of ignorance where we insist upon and believe something which is not necessarily true nor necessarily helpful. And instead of being able to jettison that and penetrate to the truth, we insist on that belief. So these are like semantics, it's not criticism. But we would say that it's a comforting thing to know or to feel or to believe or trust that whatever our meditation, our Taoist practice is going to reveal to us is already true. It can't reveal anything that is not already true. And so that enhances what Amy was talking about, the kind of trust and confidence you can feel that, I may screw up again, but at base, underneath, the truth is the truth. And that's what I'm penetrating to find.
Sensei, I've got a big book quote too. I was just thinking about this the other day, and the second step came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I realized that the insane thinking was the problem. The insanity is thinking that I am separate. It's that I'm no longer aware of my roots. That's the issue, and that's what coming back the childish taking life as a child. And a child doesn't try to think and figure everything out that I try to think and figure out. I want to know everything and how it works. And I mean, it almost killed me when I came into recovery. 5 yeyears of in and out almost killed me.
And that's what we see with all these shooters and people who cut themselves and so forth. They've become alienated from their birthright.
Yeah.
And they've had to learn that. It's an error. It's a mistake. But, they believe it.
Then that comes back to the phrase, one seeking knowledge learns something every day. One seeking wisdom, like heart wisdom, unlearns something every day.
Yep.
We're unlearning. We're unlearning.
We're unlearning the baggage that we carry, cultural baggage, personal baggage, family stuff, that may not be all that productive.
Yeah.
And,
hey, Sensei, I was meditating the other day, and I've used a mantra forever to kind of bring me in, which is the Hebrew word hanini, which is I am here.
Samini?
Hanini. Yeah, it means I am here. It's what Moses said when he saw the burning bush. He said, I am here.
Hanini?
Yeah. Of course, my verbalization of that, I'm sure, is 100% correct.
Yeah.
But I am here. And I was I've used it for years when I'm just starting, And then all of a sudden I thought, why don't I use that when I'm not on the mat? So riding down the road, I would use the I am here, and it really helped me to bring it off of the mat to every day, like like what happens for us. So that was really strong for me, helped me to do that.
The other languages in which that can happen are posture, motor muscle memory, breathing, body sensation, hearing, listening, and paying complete attention to seeing, the senses, in other words. So what we do in design training, you go through a process of what is called sensory training, where you work with materials and so forth and learn how wood behaves, concrete, paint, et cetera, with no particular object in mind, but you develop a vocabulary of how all these media work. When we come to Taoism and Zen, the medium that we're working with is consciousness itself. And so we have to go through a similar immersive process of just immersing ourselves in consciousness itself. And fortunately it's divided up into seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, and so forth, the senses. So we can pay attention to hearing, and we can pay deeper attention to hearing. Even if you're driving, you have to be careful because you can kind of zone out if you're on the expressway, We can pay more attention to breathing. And as you're saying, you can remind yourself, I am here. And that is that's like a mantra, a mantram in words. So language doesn't have to be a problem. Thinking doesn't have to be a problem. It can actually be a contributor.
Good. Sensei, any other comments on this verse? Or any questions or comments from anyone else?
It's got a lot in it, but it's very brief.
Chris?
One of the things that I've been thinking about during this discussion is the courage part of the serenity prayer. And then also with regards to lying to yourself, that's one of the things that I encounter in meditation a lot is discovering that I've been lying to myself, and I need the courage to know what to do.
Yeah.
Some comments about that would be really great. Yeah.
Well, again, Zen offers, I think, some viewpoints that relieve you of that burden to some extent. It's not like Jimmy Carter, lusting in the heart, is the same as, and so forth. It's more like in the sense of lying to yourself, like we have precepts, we say, firm life, do not kill. Or sometimes expresses, I take up the way of not killing. Understanding that it's impossible, in a literal sense. Manifest truth, do not speak falsely. So it says, okay, you can manifest truth, but you cannot really speak the truth. You certainly cannot speak the whole truth, because language itself is dualistic. And so if you translate lying into thinking or conceptualizing, in design, we don't think only in words. We think sometimes in concepts, sometimes in images, In music, we think in sound. So there are many, many languages in which we can think other than just words. So when you take the concept of lying, you have to say, how many ways can I lie to myself? And you have to lie to yourself in order to lie to others. Is a kind of a social premise in Buddhism as well as elsewhere. But Buddha takes the point of view that the way we are interpreting our direct sense data coming into our mind is already distorted. So it's already a lie. Our understanding, our grasp of reality is false. And so it goes to a much more primordial level to say, I have to examine seeing, I have to examine hearing, feeling, tasting, touching, and then maybe thinking, which is much more complicated, And if we sit still enough, long enough, a kind of reverse sensory habituation sets in place, where just as you adapt to the weight of your clothes, you don't feel the weight of your clothes, unless if I mention it, you might move around and feel it again, but you've adapted. In the same sense, sitting still enough, long enough, a kind of profound sensory adaptation sets into place, where the power of your senses over you to be distracting and to be compelling, to be seductive, the pleasures of seeing pretty things, the pleasures of hearing pretty music, tasting wonderful food, etc., body sensations, sexual pleasure, all the kinds of comforts and so forth that the body craves, are seen to come from being incarnated as this body. Repentance in refuges in Buddhism say, all my past and harmful karma, born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, the three poisons, through body, mouth, and mind, I now fully avow, I admit, I fess up. So through body, mouth, and mind means these come with the territory. So simply being a human being means that you're subject to all of this kind of conflict and desire, and it leads to compulsive behavior such as alcoholism, drugs, and etc., and lust for power, wealth. Alcohol is not the worst addictive substance. There are some much worse, and we see it all the time on television, and the behavior of politicians and so forth. Putin, he may be completely sober. He may consider himself a Christian, but look at what he's doing. So Buddhism takes a much more expansive look at this and says that the very senses themselves are addictive. Buddha pointed out that where the stimulus of sunlight, say, daylight, hits the eye, the retina, where sound hits the ear, where the temperature of the room hits the skin, the body, the gravity, the pressure, where the stimulus encounters the sense, at that interchange, at that interface, that is stress. So we don't make stress up, it's built in. And we don't make these addictions up, they're built in. It's a question of whether we can manage them or not, or whether we give in to them or not.
Does that answer your question, Chris?
That's very good. Thank you.
Amy, you have something, ma'am?
Yeah, I'm mindful of the time. I'd like to read your verse 26 out of Powerless but Not Helpless, buddy. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. How to live undisturbed. Compassion makes life easy. Surrender is the master of the restless. Therefore, those living sober can participate in the activities of the world undisturbed and without fear. They can enjoy many material goods, yet stay unattached. As long as compassion and surrender continue, all of this is possible.
Surrender, I like the use of surrender there. We consider the posture in Zen to be one of surrender. If you sit with your legs crossed, you can't run, you can't fight, So it's surrender. We surrender. We give up.
That's the first three steps, Sensei, is making us, because it's making me, because I don't want to. I was never taught surrender. I was taught the opposite, work harder and do better, double down, not surrender under any circumstances.
But if you look at the martial arts, it gives you a little clue. The bending like a willow, the jujitsu, Tai Chi, I think, as well. You surrender to the thrust of energy of your opponent. You don't resist it. You use it. In fact, you bring it into your power. So the surrender in Zen is a little more like that. It's a posture of surrender and it's an attitude of surrender. But that's the only true strength.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, sir. Any other closing comments, guys?
That comes from Taoism. Taoism is like that, the willow tree, bending.
Mm-hmm. Yield and overcome.
Yeah, a tree that doesn't bend will be broken, but the willow tree is not going to be broken.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, it's been a great conversation today. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sensei. We appreciate you, sir.
This is Sushi, the cat. There's my Zen cat.
Sushi.
Sushi.
I had sushi for dinner. Not that.
She looks like a little bit like Yellowtail. She's colored like Yellowtail a little bit. So we call her Sushi.
Say my mouth is watering looking at your cat. That's not
I had a really weird dream that I was talking to a cat, and it was talking to me in English. And it was saying it could occupy a human being. That she called them her ghosts. And she would go shopping at the store and occupying a human woman. She said, "My ghosts are always beautiful." I know I don't make this stuff up, so dreams come from somewhere else.
You sure that wasn't back in your LSD days, Sensei? That wasn't back then?
Yeah. But that was way too long ago.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Well, if there's nothing else, y'all have a great week. And we will see y'all in a meeting soon, I hope.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.